Welcome to the Deep Dive. This time, we're taking a deep dive into the world of Santa Claus.
Oh, that's perfect for the holidays.
Yeah, we're going beyond those milk and cookies.
Right.
Unpacking the history and evolution of this guy.
Mm-hmm.
So we're using Wikipedia and a YouTube video transcript you sent me
Okay, great.
to uncover, well, some pretty surprising truths about Santa.
I bet.
Did you know he wasn't always jolly?
Hmm.
Or that he was basically invented in America?
Interesting. I'm ready for some serious myth-busting.
Me too.
Okay.
So let's unpack this starting at the very beginning. Where does this whole Santa Claus story even originate?
Well, we have to go back to the 4th century
Oh, wow.
to meet St. Nicholas, who was an actual person.
A real person.
Yeah. He was a bishop in what is now Turkey.
Oh, okay.
But he was known for his generosity, particularly towards children.
Oh, okay.
And his actions ultimately laid the foundation for the gift-giving tradition that we associate with Santa.
I've always wondered about the connection between a 4th century bishop and the modern Santa Claus.
Right.
It just seems like a pretty big leap.
Yeah.
What kind of stories about St. Nicholas made him so legendary?
Well, one of the most famous stories involves him providing dowries for 3 poor sisters who couldn't afford to marry.
Really?
Yeah. Legend has it that he secretly tossed bags of gold through their window,
Wow.
saving them from a difficult fate.
What a nice guy.
Yeah. And this act of anonymous generosity became like a defining characteristic of his legacy.
Secretly throwing bags of gold through a window.
Yep.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
It's like a 4th century version of those random acts of kindness videos that go viral these days.
Exactly. It's this element of secret gift giving that really connects St. Nicholas to the Santa Claus that we know today.
Uh-huh.
But here's where things get really interesting.
Okay.
St. Nicholas's feast day was actually celebrated on December 6th, not December 25th.
Really?
Yeah, so this was like the original day for exchanging gifts.
So December 6th was like the OG Christmas.
Yeah, basically.
Huh. I never knew that.
It's pretty cool.
What happened to shift the focus to December 25th then?
Well, the celebration of Christmas as we know it evolved, obviously, over centuries.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until later that December 25th became the dominant date for gift giving.
Mm-hmm.
But, the legacy of St. Nicholas with his generosity, and his connection to children clearly paved the way for the evolution of a gift-giving figure.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
But how did we go from a Turkish bishop to this figure we know as Father Christmas?
Well,
Was that a British invention?
Father Christmas did emerge in England, but he wasn't actually directly associated with gift-giving in the same way as St. Nicholas.
Oh, okay.
He was more like a personification of the Christmas spirit itself.
Oh, interesting.
Embodying the festive cheer, feasting, the goodwill that characterized the season.
So he was more like a symbol of the warm, fuzzy feelings we associate with Christmas today.
Precisely. Imagine roaring fires, carols filling the air, just a general sense of generosity and merriment.
Oh, nice.
That was the essence of Father Christmas.
Okay. Our YouTube source described some pretty wild English Christmas parties. It mentioned a tradition of misrule.
Oh, right.
How does that fit into the picture?
That element of misrule is fascinating.
Mm-hmm.
It reflects a much older tradition, actually. It goes all the way back to Roman festivals like Saturnalia.
Oh, wow.
It was a time of revelry, a sanctioned period for letting loose and inverting social norms before the long winter months set in.
It's interesting how some of those ancient traditions of celebration and letting loose still echo in our modern holiday festivities.
Absolutely. But, for a long time, the focus was really on the overall spirit of the season.
Yeah.
Rather than a single figure delivering presents.
Yeah.
Like we see today.
Right. That is until Santa Claus entered the scene.
Yep.
But before we get to the American Santa Claus, what about Santa Claus? Our sources mention him living in Spain. That seems a bit random, doesn't it?
It does, doesn't it?
Yeah.
But not when you consider the historical context.
Okay.
The Dutch, you see, were the ones who really preserved the St. Nicholas tradition. They called him Sinterklaas.
Okay.
And during that period, Spain had significant influence over the Netherlands.
Ah, okay. So that explains that connection.
Exactly.
That makes more sense. But wooden shoes instead of stockings.
Right.
That's a new one.
Indeed. Sinterklaas, he traditionally delivered gifts in wooden shoes left by the fireplace.
Wow, okay.
And he had a helper, Black Pete, a figure whose depiction has sparked considerable debate.
Oh, I bet.
reflecting, evolving social attitudes.
Right.
Yeah,
That definitely sounds like a topic worthy of its own deep dive, maybe later.
definitely.
We've already gone from a Turkish bishop to the English spirit of Christmas, and now a Spanish-based Dutch Santa. This is shaping up to be quite the global journey.
It is, isn't it? And it gets even more interesting as we cross the Atlantic to America.
Okay.
That's where we uncover the origins of the modern Santa Claus, the one that most people instantly picture today.
America, huh? I have a feeling things are about to get a lot more familiar.
You think so?
Yeah.
Okay,
And maybe even a bit commercial.
we'll see.
Let's take a break and we'll pick up this Santa Claus origin story in part 2.
Sounds good. Welcome back to our deep dive into the world of Santa Claus.
You know, when I first imagined this episode, I pictured like cozy fireplaces and reindeer,
Mm-hmm.
not 19th century New York.
But that's where we find ourselves, because
Yeah.
this is where the modern Santa Claus really takes shape.
Our sources actually called it an invention,
Yeah,
which feels strange for such a beloved figure.
yeah, I know what you mean.
It's almost like saying Rudolph was dreamt up in a marketing meeting or something.
Right, but it highlights how traditions are molded and remolded over time.
Yeah.
The seeds were there, the St. Nicholas legend, but it was a group of writers and artists in 19th century New York
Okay.
who really crafted the Santa Claus that we know today.
So who were these Santa Claus architects?
Ah!
Give me some names.
Okay, well, two figures really stand out. Washington Irving and Clement Clark Moore.
Okay.
Now, both of them were part of the New York Historical Society,
Interesting.
which actually had strong Dutch roots and a fondness for that Sinterklaas tradition.
Ah, so they were already predisposed to like reimagining the story for American audiences.
Exactly.
Like-
Irving, he was renowned for blending fact and fiction in works like Rip Van Winkle.
Yeah.
And he sprinkled references to Santa throughout his writing.
Right.
It was in his History of New York that Santa transformed from a stern bishop into a jolly gift giver residing at the North Pole.
Wait, so Irving is responsible for Santa's North Pole address.
He is.
That's a pretty significant detail.
It is.
I always assumed he was much older.
Yeah, it showcases Irving's creative license. He also popularized the image of Santa as a pipe-smoking Dutch sailor,
Okay.
although later depictions moved away from that particular aesthetic.
Yeah, I can't quite picture Santa in a sailor suit these days.
No.
What about Clement Clark Moore?
Yes.
Our YouTube source mentioned him as a key player, too.
Oh, absolutely. Moore's contribution is arguably even more impactful.
Okay.
His 1823 poem, A Visit from St. Nicholas, better known as 'Twas the Night Before Christmas, cemented many of the iconic Santa Claus elements we know today.
Right, that's the one that practically every child memorizes. It's almost like the Santa Claus origin story.
It certainly played a foundational role.
Yeah.
Moore introduced the reindeer with their now famous names, Dasher, Dancer, Prancer, and the rest.
Yeah.
And he gave us that lasting image of Santa as chubby and plump, a right jolly old elf.
With a belly like a bowl full of jelly.
That's it.
And let's not forget that iconic sleigh overflowing with gifts.
Of course not.
Moore's poem truly painted a vivid picture of Santa's world.
It did, and it's remarkable how much influence it wielded.
Yeah.
Now, while there's still some debate about the poem's true authorship, some believe it was written by Henry Livingston Jr., its impact on shaping Santa's image is undeniable.
So by the mid-19th century, America had its own homegrown Santa Claus.
They did.
A far cry from that Turkish bishop we started with.
Indeed, but the transformation wasn't quite complete.
Oh, really?
Yeah, Santa's image remained somewhat fluid throughout the 19th century.
Okay.
Different artists depicted him in various ways,
Mm.
sometimes stern, sometimes whimsical.
Interesting.
There wasn't one definitive look.
So how did we arrive at the singular image of Santa Claus that everyone instantly recognizes today?
Well, that's where Coca-Cola enters the picture.
Uh-huh.
In the 1930s, artist Haddon Sundblom created the now iconic Santa Claus for their advertising campaigns.
Right. I knew there had to be a Coca-Cola connection somewhere.
It's fascinating, though, that they weren't the first company to use Santa in advertising.
Oh, really?
Yeah, White Rock Beverages used Santa to promote their mineral water in the early 1900s.
Huh.
But it was Sundblom's version for Coca-Cola, with his rosy cheeks and twinkling eyes and just undeniable warmth that truly captured the public imagination.
And that image has clearly endured.
It has.
It's interesting to think about how much our modern perception of Santa Claus is tied to a marketing campaign.
It is.
We've come a long way from a 4th century bishop to a Dutch sailor and then to the Coca-Cola Santa.
Right.
It's incredible how much this figure has evolved over centuries and across continents.
It speaks to the enduring appeal of Santa Claus
Yeah.
and the values he represents. Generosity, kindness, the magic of Christmas.
But our sources also highlighted some criticism surrounding Santa.
Uh-huh.
There's that commercialism aspect, of course,
Yeah.
and then the whole debate about the Santa lie.
These are important considerations.
Yeah.
Some argue that Santa has become overly commercialized,
Yeah.
a symbol of our consumerist culture. Others question the ethics of perpetuating the belief in Santa for children, knowing they'll eventually discover the truth.
It's definitely a complex issue.
It is.
On one hand, you have the joy and wonder Santa brings to children.
Right.
On the other, there's potential for, disappointment when they realize he's not real.
It's a dilemma many parents grapple with.
Yeah.
But the very existence of these debates demonstrates how deeply embedded Santa Claus is in our culture. He's more than just a jolly old elf. He sparks both celebration and controversy.
It's definitely food for thought.
It is.
We've covered a lot of ground. The real St. Nicholas, the evolution of Father Christmas, the Dutch Santa Claus, the American invention of Santa, even the Coca-Cola connection.
A lot.
But I'm curious about what comes next. What about Santa's legacy? What does his enduring presence say about us?
That's an excellent question.
Yeah.
And a perfect segue into the final part of our deep dive.
Okay.
Join us as we explore the legacy of Santa Claus and what it reveals about our culture and values.
Welcome back to the deep dive. We've traced Santa's journey from a 4th century bishop to the jolly old elf we all know and love.
It has been quite a ride.
It really has.
Yeah.
As we wrap up this deep dive, I'm curious about what Santa's legacy really is. What does his continued presence in our culture, even with all the complexities, say about us as a society?
It's a question worth pondering. When you think about it, Santa Claus embodies a certain yearning for a simpler time, for childlike wonder, and for the belief that good things can happen.
I have to admit, even as an adult, there's still a part of me that feels a twinge of magic when I think about Santa Claus. It's like he represents the best aspects of humanity, generosity, kindness, and that sense of giving without expecting anything in return.
You've hit on something crucial there. Santa Claus, despite his complicated history and the commercial forces that have shaped his image, still taps into a very deep-seated human desire for hope and joy.
It's interesting that even with all the debates about commercialization and the whole Santa lie, his image remains largely positive. He's almost like a secular saint, carrying on the legacy of St. Nicholas in a way that transcends specific religious beliefs.
That's a really insightful observation. Santa Claus has definitely transcended his religious origins to become a figure that resonates with people from all walks of life.
But we can't ignore that commercial aspect either. Santa Claus has become deeply entwined with consumerism. Is it even possible to separate that from his overall legacy?
It's a valid point. Santa Claus has undoubtedly been used to fuel consumerism, particularly in the modern era. But I don't think that entirely negates the positive values he represents.
It's like anything else, right? There are good aspects and bad aspects. The commercialization and then the genuine spirit of giving. It's up to each individual to decide what Santa Claus ultimately means to them.
Precisely. He's become a blank canvas onto which we project our own values and beliefs. He can represent hope, generosity, childlike wonder, or commercial excess.
So what do you think the future holds for Santa Claus? Will he continue to evolve, or will that classic Coca-Cola image prevail?
That's the big question, isn't it? As our society continues to change, so too will our perceptions of Santa Claus. Perhaps he'll become more diverse, more environmentally conscious, or even reflect new cultural values.
I could definitely see a future with a solar-powered sleigh and a team of robot reindeer.
The possibilities are truly endless, but I think one thing is certain. Those core themes of generosity, kindness, and the magic of believing will likely remain at the heart of the Santa Claus legend, whatever form he takes.
This deep dive has really changed my perspective on Santa Claus. He's clearly much more than just a jolly old elf. He's a reflection of our history, our values, and our enduring fascination with the magic of the holiday season.
Well said. And with that, we want to wish you a very happy holiday season, filled with joy, generosity, and perhaps just a little bit of that Santa Claus magic.
Merry Christmas and happy holidays to all.